Welcome back to Best Pod Available. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts here for A to Z Sports at the 2026 NFL Combine. We've got more Combine buzz. Ryan Roberts has been out and about pulling information. He's been getting as much little scuttlebutt out at the bars at night, and he's got another one here regarding a premier receiver. Care to share what you just told me?
Yeah, I think that KC Concepcion, who is the wide receiver out of Texas A&M, formerly NC State, there is going to be a large contingency of teams, it appears, that are going to be aggressive potentially to move back into the back end of the first round to make sure to get him. I think, Joe, that we should expect a little bit of an early wide receiver run, and he's going to generate a large amount of interest in that capacity.
So before we talk about him as a player, I'm really wrapping my head around what you just said because it didn't click originally. You're basically saying that there's going to be teams that are picking, let's say, in the first 10 picks-ish,
30s,
in that range.
40 maybe.
Yeah, at the very
40s,
beginning of the second round. You believe that there is going to be momentum and aggressiveness for multiple teams to move back into the end of the first round to go get him. That is what you're stating?
Yes, I think that there are several teams potentially in the top 10 that are going to do kind of the position value type of conversation, right, that are going to be picking at the early portion of the second round, and in the expectation that Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson will potentially be off the board in the top 20 picks more than likely. I do think there's a large contingency of teams that are going to be in. It's going to be a high-demand player in KC Concepcion to try to get back up and get him.
So to further interpret that, wide receiver class is solid at the start of the second round.
Right.
Do you agree with that logic that he is the premier receiver at the top of the wide receiver, the second wide receiver tier? Do you think that he is that top guy that teams should be that aggressive to go and get him?
I actually do. KC is a very unique player in this class because there's like that early portion of like that second tier after the top three. We're talking about guys like Omar Cooper Jr. and Denzel Boston, and each of them have appealing qualities, obviously. But I think KC brings as much after-catch juice, ability to win in space as any wide receiver in this class overall. So I do think in the modern NFL of manipulating, creating space, I do think that he's a player that is going to have high demand for that, just that yak ability and just the profile that he brings. So I think that he is a very divisive prospect in the sense of he does need to be more consistent catching the football, winning through contact. But for a team that wants to evaluate, manipulate space, I do think that there is going to be high demand, and I understand that demand.
Yeah, I come a little split on this because how much better is he really than... So actually this kind of funnels into Omar Cooper was the other guy that we heard about this week that appears to be likely going in the first round. It sounds like that is the one other big piece of buzz, is that he is also going higher than many anticipate. So with that regard, though, I feel as though Concepcion and Cooper, and maybe we could throw in there Denzel Boston, like they're all different players, solid options. Is it worth selling capital, depending on what that capital is, to go get him? I don't know if I fully commit to that. Would you rather have Cooper or Concepcion just in a vacuum?
I would rather have Concepcion, but I think it's an interesting conversation. I think they both do similar things functionally, right? They're both after catch dudes who makes a lot after the initial catch. But I do think that Cooper is a little bit more of like that physical, dense build, works through contact a little bit better. Casey's more of that jitterbug, make guys miss in space, and has really good change of direction. So I think there are different types of the same role. It really just depends on which role that you value in that skill set.
I do find it I find it quite intriguing that now is when we're going to start to find out who are the players that are, more specifically the position groups, that teams would be worthy to make that jump back in because they don't feel confident or like the depth of the position group. I'm intrigued by the fact that wide receiver has become the early candidate for that because arguably wide receiver is one of the better position groups. Maybe as more of these teams are doing their homework, yes, some are probably falling in love with Casey Concepcion, but maybe some of these later round guys are not as enticing as maybe we have come to believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I would say it like this, though. I think that when we're talking about the trade back into the back end of the first round, if there is going to be a trade back, some of the positions that usually value to be traded up for, I don't think are strong in this class just in general.
Yeah.
So is there an offensive tackle at the back end of the first round that you want to trade up for?
So wait, that was the position group that I would have automatically assumed would have been the one that would have motivated tradebacks in, because, yes, to your comment, no, this is not a great offensive line class that I feel like it would be worthy generally to move back in.
Right.
But the depth at tackle is awful. The depth at interior offensive line is not
solid.
It's not good. It's just not good.
It's okay.
So if Vega Ione is still on the board and you're a team you're panicked by your offensive line, easy team example, the New York Giants, if Vega's on the board at like 25, do you consider moving up and that being your second-round pick, considering it'll be much cheaper to move up than it typically is? That is something that would make plenty of sense. It would be sound logic, especially for those teams picking in the top 10 of the second round, that most of them have bad offensive lines. Maybe a Maxi Anachor, the Arizona State tackle, who probably in many other draft classes is a second-round pick, but a team that does not want to miss out on the high-upside tackle and doesn't want to come away leaving day 2 with anything that is to be excited about in an offensive line prospect. I would have thought that O-line would be the position group that we'd be hearing more about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I just don't think the demand's going to be there, especially because, again, when we're trading up for offensive linemen.
Wait.
What was that? What?
You don't think he's going to be there? What do you mean?
Who's that? Who?
You just said you don't think the man is going to be there.
The demand.
Oh,
the demand.
The man.
The demand is going to be there for offensive line because, again, what gets traded up for, Joe? Guards? Not really. Right tackles? Not really. Centers? Not really. Blindside protectors are the ones that usually, you move up to try to get. And again, I don't think there's going to be a ton of options in the back end of round 1 to create that demand. Wide receivers interesting because the teams at the top, the Tennessee Titans in the top 10, the New York Jets in the top 10, the New Orleans Saints in the top 10, some teams that could potentially be in the market for wide receiver, but if they don't like a guy there that high in the top 10, they might have to understand that, hey, if there's a run and let's say Mekhi Lemon and the other 2, Tyson and Tate, are gone by 16, you want to make sure that instead of getting someone jumped in front of you at 35, to make sure that you get back into the first round or into the 30s in general, if you're the Jets, whatever, to be able to get up and try to get a wide receiver. So I really do think that is going to be a player that people are going to be very high on in terms of his skill set, and I do think that teams are going to mortgage a lot to potentially go get KC Concepcion.
Yeah, that's I think the most important part about all this is that there are a lot of teams that it feels like we've been talking about for a long time that need to get better receivers and need to get better weapons for young quarterbacks. So now this is the world that we live in. Maybe Concepcion does end up driving up. Is he testing? I can't keep track of who's testing or not.
I think so, but don't quote me on it. I think so, but don't quote me.
If he does test, and he does test really well, it feels like a guy that probably locks himself into what you're projecting here.
As Amon-Ra St. Brown once said, if you're going to run fast, go run.
It's a good point. Like button, subscribe. We'll talk to you guys later. Day 2 reactions coming later tonight.